What's up, guys? Evolutionary podcast coming your way. We have another great episode. Stevesmi here, and I got Rick. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Steve? What's up, guys? How's everybody doing out there?
Checking in, man. Another day. So let's get into our topics. We have some really cool topics, guys. The first one is going to be about traveling with steroids. Let's start with that. Traveling with steroids. Let's say you're on cycle and you got to go and travel, either domestic or international. What do you do? Do you stay on cycle? Do you stop your cycle? Do you take your steroids with you? What are the laws when it comes to that? Rick, you travel a lot, and I'm assuming that you've been in this predicament many, many times. What's your advice on this? What are the best, safest things to do in that situation?
All right. Well, one thing to just right off the bat, I'll say the worst idea anyone could have is try to bring steroids with them on an airplane into the United States or into, Australia or UK, one of these really first world countries. You don't want to fly in with steroids, first of all. That's probably not a great idea. But if you already live in one of these countries and you're flying out of the country or flying within the country and you need to take your gear with you, then there's some things you can do to make sure that it's, it's stealthy and that you don't have a lot of explaining to do. Now, again, going into the country, into one of these first world countries like US, UK, Australia, Canada, and let's say you're coming from a third world country, your plane is going to be looked at it more closely than if you're flying in from another first world country. So if you're coming in from out of the country, just be careful. Now, as far as flying with your stuff, right? Now, I'm not going to tell anybody out there do this, but as far as flying with your stuff, tablets. If you got tablets or capsules, I travel with a lot of supplements, and sometimes I'll have my monthly pack of pills with me that has the little container with the 30 days of little tablets and capsules I can put together. What are those things called, Steve? A pill organizer or something?
Yeah, there's little $2-3 pill organizers you get from like the drugstore.
Yeah. So I'd have one of those, and you just stuff them, man. And if you have 10, 15 different items in each one of those, and one of those happens to be, or a couple of those happens to be your steroids, chances are they're going to be pretty stealthy there. If you don't bring the bottles with you, but you bring those pill organizers for the week or the month or whatever, and you just put your things in there casually, you'd have to be getting taken a look at, and they'd have to test all your stuff. I mean, it would get really complex at that point. So right off the bat, one of the things you don't want to do, just remember, is take anything with labels or boxes or stickers, anything that says what's in it. Loose tablets, liquid that's been put in a different container. Again, you're looking at testing before they can even tell what it is. And from what I can tell so far, and I could be wrong about this, but from what I can tell, at the international airports, where the freight comes in, where the packs come in, they have like a mobile mass spectrometer that can test things on the spot and tell them what it is. But I don't think customs, where people go through, they have that item yet. I know they, when they're testing for people bringing in narcotics and other things, they have the field test that change colors. So again, you'd have to be really a target, and they'd have to have a really good reason to look at you. Maybe being 230, 240 pounds ripped might make you subject, and they might think you're already doing something. But again, if you have your BCAs in your pill organizer with your creatine caps, with your multivitamins, with your stuff, and you got a couple of tabs in there, they might not find them. Another thing you could do, which is very, very nifty, very crafty, you could bring bottles of legal over-the-counter supplements with you. And then if you have capsules, just swap out one of the bottles completely for one of your capsules of your good stuff. If your stuff comes in tabs or some of these smaller tabs that you can maybe break in half a little bit, you can open your bottle, let's say, of Entuslin, right? Now, I'm not saying anybody do this, but Entuslin, HCGen, whatever, right? And you pull it out, you pour out some capsules, you pick some out, and you open them. and you let some of what's inside pour out. Then you you break your tabs in half, and you stick them in the capsule, and you close them back up. And then with a little knife, you make a little mark on both sides, so it looks like a little mark, almost like a little screw, almost. And you do that to every capsule that you've loaded with your tab of juice of sauce. You put a little mark on it, and then you toss all the fucking caps back in that bottle. So now you might have a bottle of HC Gen that's got 100 tablets, 100 capsules of just HC Gen, and then 50 that are loaded with a little, Tavadibble that's broken into. And the way you can tell which is because you made a little mark on both edges of the capsule, and you know which one is which. So even if you got down to it where you were really unlucky and they took your bottle of HC Gen and this of N2 Generate, said, "What is this?" And you'd have a 3-to-1 chance that the capsule that gets tested might not have the sauce in it. As far as liquids, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve. You got something, Steve?
Yeah. So wouldn't they be looking for that though? Because if you're trying to smuggle like heroin or cocaine from another country, hasn't someone already thought of doing that? Like, wouldn't they think like, wow, this guy has these supplements? Wouldn't they already think like, wow, this is kind of suspicious, or no? Like,
Okay, good question. Well, like I said at the start, you don't want to bring anything into the country. I'm talking about if you're flying out of the U.S. to Dominican Republic for a vacation and you want to continue your cycle. If you're flying from, New York to L.A. and you got stuff to do, it's just a stealthy way of bringing it. But if you're coming into the country, man, and you're going through customs, one thing, it's not really even about your answers or what you have on you. It's about your attitude. And if you're not a career criminal, when you're in front of a customs officer and you've got some shit on you that you're hiding, you're gonna get nervous and you're gonna begin sweating, and your pupils are gonna dilate, and your hands are gonna shake a little bit, and they'll just know right away before they even open your stuff that you're fucked, that you're doing something you're not supposed to, because you're not a career criminal. So flying into the U.S., flying into the UK. Look, didn't Stallone go to spend a night in jail or two for trying to fly his testosterone, or what was it, human growth hormone into Australia? Was it
correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you definitely do not want to fly into a first world country carrying anything illegal. And steroids are Schedule 3 in the U.S. So if you're at JFK Airport, if you're at Miami Airport, LAX coming in, and you've got steroids with you, it's in no prescription, no U.S. prescription, by the way. It's got to be U.S. prescription. But if you have some steroids with you from out of the country and no real prescription, it's as good as having heroin or cocaine with you. You know what I mean? But what I do mean is, in case you're going for a trip, you stealth out, 50 tabs and turn them into. So that way, man, look, you might be in Miami hanging out, and you just don't even want to leave in your room a bottle of juice. You don't want to carry with you stuff that looks suspect just for any reason. So you can stealthily load it in some of your capsules from over-the-counter supplements and go. And again, there are no customs flying inside of the U.S. There's also no customs on the way out of the U.S. Some countries will do customs on the way out. Like some countries that have problems with drugs coming out of the country, they will have customs on the way out. So let's say you're trying to bring steroids to the U.S. from Mexico or Dominican Republic or South America. They might catch them on the way out because they'll check your stuff before you leave. Something the U.S. doesn't do. The U.S. it's not worried about you smuggling stuff out. They only worry about what's coming in. So, these things I said work. Also, if you have liquids, if you order some auxiliary stuff, oral liquids, just buy the little pack, the ones that are legal for flight, for carry-on, replace it, and always check that shit in. By the way, another thing, you never want to carry on any liquids, any tablets, any supplements, anything, bro. Just check that shit in, check it in. Because carry-on, not only are they also worried about you taking stuff you're not supposed to, which is always a problem with plane flight, but carry-on, they're worrying about you doing something dangerous inside of the airplane. So there's an extra level of scrutiny that carry-on packages go through than check-ins. Check-in, they're just worried about the regular stuff and not worried about you doing anything funny on the plane. Carry-on, you could You could, they'll look at your bottle of supplements and they'll say, "What's in these tabs? What powder is in there?" They might worry you're doing something weird to do on the plane. So that
Yeah.
all that shit gets checked in. Yeah, all that stuff gets checked in. So
They wouldn't even let me take toothpaste on the plane.
no, you can't. You can't. You can't. Don't
Yeah,
you? You
it's
can't.
ridiculous.
You can't. If you take a nail clipper, it can't have the file on it with the little pin with the little point on it. I mean, they really are. They're very strict. So definitely never carry anything on that you shouldn't, that you need to be worried about. And as far as traveling with your stuff, man, look, I just gave you a bunch of solutions. Just get a pill organizer, no anything, and just fill your mutts, and you have your tabs in there. Very, very hard to get looked at. Bring real over-the-counter supplements, 4, 5, 6 bottles that you're taking with you, and in one of those, only a portion of them, load them up with your sauce, mark the sides, you're good. If you've got liquids, oral liquids that you drink, make sure swap them out and replace them. Now, if you have injectables, you have oils that you got to take with you, that's rough. I probably would not do that. Now, again, if you're flying out of the US, you could take a chance just taking the labels off those bottles and flying with them blank, and maybe tossing them in with with something that's similar, vape stuff, hair, facial care stuff. And you can, a customs official at the country you're arriving is busy enough. They don't, they're not going to sit there and try to, especially if you're going on a vacation to a third world country. Like I said, I'm using DR, Cancun as an example. They're not going to sit there and have a portal mass spectrometer to test what your stuff is. You're pretty in the clear. The main thing with traveling is don't travel with anything that says what the fuck it is on it, because you gave yourself out right away. If the stuff is just unlabeled and you know what it is, you'd have to run into a really serious issue and get put through a really serious machine for them to figure out what the hell is in there.
How are you going to inject it, though, when you get to that country?
Most countries you can buy needles over the counter. Look, if you're going to DR, if you're going to Cancun, just buy the fucking steroids over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, bro. If you're going to DR, if you're going to third world country, that's another thing that's just silly to me. If you're going to a third world country, just buy the fucking steroids over there. If you're going to especially if you're going to inject, you could take some of your pills with you. If you're going to inject. If you're traveling New York to LA, just take the fucking labels of the stuff, put it in other items that look like it, check that shit in, and hope for the best. You should be in the clear. I mean,
So what do you tell the guy when you get there? You just tell the taxi driver as soon as you get to the airport, "Yo, take me to buy steroids." What do you tell him? Take me to the pharmacy.
You first go online and find supplement stores in that area, in that city, and once you go online and you find the supplement stores in the city. I mean, if it's a country where steroids are not criminalized the way they are in the U.S., where a steroid model is the same as having narcotics, if it's a country where it's not like that, you could just you could make calls to the supplement stores and even the farmacia before you even come down. Long distance call, Skype, say, "Hey, you have this, you have that. I'll be there in a week." You could work that shit out. I wouldn't go like a cab driver and say, "Get me steroids." They could usually get narcotics, but probably not steroids. I would definitely
They get
that's steroids. Just hit the supplement stores, man, muscle stores where they, in third world countries where they sell protein and BCAAs, they'll sell steroids behind the counter as well. In most third world.
How do you say steroids in Spanish, just in case I ever go?
El esteroido.
Okay. They won't know steroids with no.
It's steroide. Or you say like steroide or testosterone, or testosterone, nandrolona. It's like nandrolone, or
What about juice? How do you say juice?
Oh, juice is jugo, but they don't call it jugo.
I can't just point at my voice and say juice. They don't know.
They just call it they call funny enough. At least in Venezuela and Colombia, they call it pincho. Pincho means the injection, like the injection site. They just call it site. Or they call it going on cycle. There is no words. They call them anabolics, or they call it going on cycle, or they call it hitting the pincho, hitting the needle. But they don't, it's not like saws, gear, juice like we have. There isn't really a word for it that I know of yet.
So if I get to the resort, I can go to the front desk dude. It's easy to get narcotics, and just say, "Hey, narcotics," and he'll hook me up. You think? The front
Usually
desk
cab
clerk?
drivers. Usually cab
The cab
drivers.
drivers got the hookup? Okay.
Usually cab drivers have the hookup. Front desk people, the front desk people usually very well paid. They're usually the ones that are bilingual. Those are most likely going to be afraid of their job a little bit. The bellman, the guy takes you up to your room. They're usually down to help out with whatever. Cab drivers are down to help out with whatever. And look, with social media, with Facebook, you can just network and find the places in the city that you're going to and start talking about the steroids and everything you're going to encounter when you get there. I mean, before you even go. In a lot of these countries, steroids are not illegal. They're not such a big deal. Look, for example, in I know in Colombia, where I go a lot, they are not illegal to possess, to sell, to use, nothing. You're not allowed to make them. If you make steroids, they might put you in jail for making fake medications, quote unquote. But if you are using them, buying them, selling them, you could buy them pretty much over the counter at any pharmacy. You could buy testosterone here.
All right, buddy. That's good information. So the next one is he's in his mid-30s. He's new to the game, and he wants to know his friend kind of introduced him to steroids. He knows absolutely nothing about them. He wants to know what's the next step because he wants to educate himself on it. So let me say first, when I was in that situation, a friend of mine also got me, interested in steroids. So the first thing I did is I went online. I started Googling, and I came across the old EF forum. And the old EF forum was chock full of information. There were a lot of vets on there. And I kind of, networked with some of these vets. I kind of picked their brain a little bit, some of these moderators on there. And I kind of learned that way. So I think that's a good first step. I saw, I read a lot of threads, looked at a lot of posts from people. If I had questions, I posted a thread and asked. And that's kind of how I got into the game. So I learned that way. I think today there's a lot more information out there. If you go on our forum, evolutionary.org forum, there's so many articles on every compound, and there's stacks, and there's all kinds of information. There's information how to get blood work. There's information on every compound, every supplement, every SARM, everything. So it's chock full of information. So there's really no excuse today, I think, to do your own homework. And at the end of the day, reach out to me, Stevesmi, in the forum if you have further questions, and I'll do my best to definitely help you. I'm a busy guy, but I'll do my best to help you with any questions you have. But it's always good to just do your homework. Don't listen to friends. There's a lot of bad information that you will get from listening to buddies of yours. Who really don't know what they're doing either, but they, even though they've used steroids for like maybe 2-3 years or 5 years, they still don't know what they're doing. So you really need to do your own homework before you put stuff in your body. How about you, Rick? How'd you get into the steroid game and originally, and what's your advice today for guys?
Quick run through. I discussed it on another podcast of how I got into it, but basically I was always kind of interested in juice and steroids just from hearing it mentioned, being in the gym and as a teenager and working out. And I used to buy a lot of supplements, and I picked up a magazine one day. It was two blonde girls on the cover working out, two blonde girls. I believe that was the first issue I picked up. I can't quite remember. It might have been earlier, but it was Muscle Media 2000. And I started reading articles by Dan Duchesne. I started reading articles by Bill Phillips. Started reading a lot of information there. Bought some Phosphagen, bought some EAS products, bought into Vanadil at the time. And I really started to learn about steroids and the legality of steroids and everything during the Muscle Media 2000 era when I was reading all those articles. And then that was very late 90-ish. And then around 1999, I actually got online to, it was the first computer that we had at the house. It was a birthday gift from my dad when I was about 18. And I just got online and I found Elite Fitness. I found elitefitness.com just shy of the year 2000 going in. And man, it was just a treasure trove of information. bunch of really smart guys there discussing all these compounds are very high level. And back then, man, sources were abundant, very abundant, and stuff used to get through customs a lot easier. Everything was legit, human grade or veterinarian. There were no UG labs. There were no underground labs to speak of. People used to argue about what was better, human grade or vet grade. A lot of guys would refuse to use veterinarian grade stuff. They just wouldn't. Only human grade. So it's a different story. Nowadays today, right? If you're an older guy, 35, 30 something, and you get into steroids, you probably have a career, kids, a wife. You have things to do. You don't have all fucking day to sift through all this information that is out there. It's very, very hard. And because there is so much information out there, it's hard to get through it all. So here's what you need. You only need a couple of things. You don't need a lot. You need one. You need a book. You need Bill Llewellyn's Anabolics book. It's a good reference guide. It lists a lot of very important information, and it's just a good guide to have. Bill Llewellyn's book. I think if you use steroids, you should at least have one of the editions. Second, subscribe to this podcast. Make sure it automatically downloads to your phone. We're doing 2 episodes a week. You can go back pretty far on the podcast and find a lot of good information. Or if you start podcast 254 was my first episode. Is that right, Steve? I don't remember. What was my first episode?
I'm not sure. It's around there, yeah.
So around when I got on the podcast, around episode 254, 255, 256 that we started, I wanted to make it all about steroids, like just distill it down to just pure steroid information and nothing else. So subscribe to this podcast, because every week you're going to have not only this question and answer, but you're also going to have a compound that is featured that week for being discussed in depth. This week, on Thursday, we should have the podcast up for testosterone. Last Thursday, we had the podcast up for equipoise. Thursday before that, we had the podcast up for Dianabol. So get on this subscribe to this podcast, buy Bill Llewellyn's book. Make sure you register and have a membership to both evolutionary.org and Elite Fitness. And that's about it. I mean, you might want to follow Dave. I like Dave Palumbo. I like his stuff on YouTube. He's good. He covers the IFBB a lot. So he covers a lot of the bodybuilding shows. And that's something not many guys out there care about. A lot of dudes want to use steroids, want to look good, don't care about bodybuilding competitions. So you will have to, sift through some of that stuff, some of the bodybuilding coverage in order to get some really good info. But that is a good YouTube channel to follow, is Dave's. Also subscribe to Need to Build Muscle YouTube channel, n2bm.tv. So we have some good videos there. But that's about all you need, man. You need that book as a guide. You need this podcast to keep you up to date. 2 episodes a week of just distilled information. We've already done all the research for you. We're just letting you know what Steve and I know to be the most effective and safest course of action if you're already going to undertake this kind of unsafe lifestyle, I guess you could say. And a membership to the forums. So why is the membership to the forums important? The reason the membership to the forums is very important is because you can ask questions real time, live, anonymously. You can't do that on Facebook. You can't look. Even if you search something on Google, you're going to be offered ads. Google is tracking what you do, what you ask it. You can go on the forums. You can go on Elite Fitness. You can go on evolutionary.org or elitefitness.com. You can search in the search engine any questions that you have. You can go on the forums anonymously, completely anonymously, ask your questions. Elite Fitness, Evolutionary is never going to chase you around Facebook and Instagram, reminding you of what you posted on the forums. It's just completely anonymous and completely disconnected from your social. So you need those 3 things, man. You need the desk reference guide. You need the podcast to listen to, and you need to be able to get on the forums and ask some questions and solve some stuff. You got those 3 things. That's a very good place to start, and that's a good way to not have to, go through a lot of stuff. You could just get right to the info you're looking for.
All right, guys. So our third one, this is a good one for especially you guys who are new to this. We get this complaint a lot. Guys start using steroids and their joints start aching. So first off, let me take this one first. I think the first thing I want to know in your situation is your history. Do you have a history of joint issues? I'd want to know, what's your physique like? What's your physical structure like? It's not a coincidence that you see guys who have like long, lanky limbs tend to complain more about their knees and their elbows than guys who have shorter limbs. Guys with shorter limbs tend to have issues with the lower legs, with the ankles, maybe with the feet, with the hands, with the wrists even. So it just depends on your physical stature. And then I'd also want to know what you're using on cycle. There is definitely a connection between what guys use and joint issues. I can say me, I don't have an issue with joints, but when I use Winstrol, that dried my joints a lot, and I started getting achy joints on Winstrol. So I want to know what you're using. So those factors all have, a profound effect. Other than that, you also got to look at your workouts themselves. Are you overtraining? If you do too much training of a specific joint, let's say you do tons of pull-ups one day, do 10 sets of pull-ups, and then for the next week, your elbows are hurting. Well, you probably did something to cause a little bit of a nagging injury, and your body starts spitting out inflammation to kind of repair that overtraining. So maybe you overtrained. Maybe your form isn't good. If you're lifting heavy weights, if you're not using correct form, if you're doing 1 or 2 rep and maxing out on these lifts, that can affect your joint health. Your diet, that's another issue. Are you getting enough good fats in your diet? A lot of guys don't get enough good fats in their diets. If you don't get good fats, you're not lubricating your joints. And then finally, N2 Joint RX is a great supplement for joint health. That's something you definitely should be taking. If you're lifting heavy, if you're using Winstrol, if you're using most steroids like Tren, things like that, that really, really put a lot of pressure on your joints, and you're going heavy and you're going hard, then N2 Joint RX makes a big difference. If you look at the ingredients on it, it's full of excellent products, excellent supplements all in one that can help with that. So for me, when I started getting my joint problems, I started taking it and I kind of eased up on my training. I stopped the Winstrol, and then the joint problems slowly, gradually got better. But if I had kept pounding away, that problem could have been chronic. So that's something you don't want. You don't want chronic injuries by pounding away. Rick, what's your opinion on it?
Well, joint pain is tricky. Joint pain is very tricky. Now, when it comes to just bodybuilding reasons for joint pain, obviously, bad form, too much weight, bad technique, not resting enough, dropping your estrogen too low. If you overdo the anti-estrogens and you drop your estrogen too low, you'll experience some joint pain. Some of the steroids that will dry you up a little bit, like Winstrol, like Steve said, will give people a little bit of joint pain, joint discomfort. So, making sure that you're not dropping your estrogen too low, overdoing the anti-Es, just watching, keep an eye on what you're using. Those are all very valid ways to deal with it. Now, here's another thing I want everybody out there to understand as well about joint pain. Don't ignore it, because constant joint pain can be something else, something much more serious than just what you're doing in the gym or just the steroids you're taking or anti-estrogens you're taking, something way serious. Joint pain can also be a symptom for anything from cancer, even excess uric acid, which will crystallize in your joints and make everything painful. If the joint pain doesn't act like normal joint pain, you need to get out to the doctor. And what is normal joint pain? Normal joint pain, it starts to get better after a day or two. If you hurt a joint today, you worked out today, tomorrow it should be a little bit better, and then the day after it'll get better. If your joint pain or bone pain gets progressively worse or is worsening, even as maybe you lay off the gym, you got to go checked out, because joint pain can be something way more serious than anything you're doing in the gym.
All right, guys. So our next topic is another one we get almost every day on the forum. And it's guys who are pinning steroids and they're complaining about pain at the site, pain running down from the site, and also red, hot to the touch pain. So what is going on here, guys? Let me just say, first of all, we get this question a lot. And guys, most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, it is not an infection. What that is simply your body having a reaction to what you're injecting, because our bodies think that it's a foreign invader when you inject the gear. It could be something, it could be the metabolites in the gear, it could be the oil, the type of oil, it could be your body's just in the mood to freak out. Maybe your body just didn't want to be injected that day, so it's going to react. So what does the body do when it reacts to any foreign invasion? Of course, it's going to raise the temperature because it wants to get rid of it. It's trying to expel it out of the body. So that's a normal way for our immune system to react. So most of the time, guys, 99% of the time, it is nothing to worry about, especially if it starts right away. It's simply that post-injection pain. Now, what I would recommend is that if you continuously get this issue and you're rotating sites and you're getting this consistently, I would change the type of gear you're injecting, because obviously it's not agreeing with you. And sometimes some sources, they might use grapeseed oil, they may use cottonseed oil, they may use another oil. I've seen sources even use peanut oil. If you're allergic to peanuts, every time you inject, you're going to have a reaction because your body is going to think that you're getting invaded by peanuts and your body doesn't like peanuts. So try a different source. If you're getting this from a specific spot on your body, stop injecting that spot because your body does not like to be pinned there. Another problem too is tissue irritation. And this is really common. If you inject in your triceps and your biceps and your calves, those types of very, very sensitive muscles, again, you will get something called tissue irritation. And the bad news with tissue irritation, it's going to take a while to go away. It can take 7, 8, 9, 10 days, 2 weeks to go away. And in that time, there's really not much you can do except maybe put some ice on it to kind of ease up on that. And you might notice it kind of gets big, the muscle kind of like gets like 25, 50% bigger than the other muscle because it's inflamed, because the body's trying to fight what it perceives as an injury. So there's all kinds of different reasons for these types of issues. But if it consistently happens, guys, you have to consider changing brands, or you have to consider not injecting in that specific spot. And I've had all the above happen to me. I'm one of the more sensitive guys when it comes to post-injection pain. We call it PIP on the forums. I'm probably one of the more sensitive people when it comes to it. I get reactions to just about every gear out there. It sucks, but it's just something that I've learned to live with. And one of the tricks I do is just I don't inject very much steroids. And I make sure that the muscles I inject in don't mind being injected, and I inject after a hot shower and stuff like that, and it kind of eases it up. So everyone's different. Some guys can just inject and it doesn't even bother them. How about you, Rick? What's your advice here?
I think you covered it pretty well. I would say, look, one way to know if you have an actual infection from your shot is the way it looks. If it's light in the middle and reddish, darkish on the outside, chances are that is an infection. When I mean light in the middle, I don't mean you wait until this pus there and now I have an infection. Now, like, it'll be warm to the touch. It'll have like a reddish ring, and it'll be lighter in the middle while the infection is coming along. And another way to know if it's an infection or your muscle is just sore from the injection, maybe short esters, steroids crystallized, whatever. One way to know if it's an infection or not is if it gets progressively worse. If it gets worse, if it doesn't improve. An infection is going to get progressively worse as opposed to maybe a bad shot, which should get better, feel better the next day, and feel better after. So that is another way of knowing if you have an infection. Everything else, man, just like Steve said, I think you covered it well, Steve. No need to go over it again. I think.
All right, guys. So our last topic is funny gym stories. So let me tell mine first. and let Rick, if Rick has one or if he wants to react. So this happened quite a few years ago. This was over in at a gym. It was a pretty good meathead gym that I used to work out at, and so I'm working out just like normal. So it's like a normal 6 o'clock evening. Like to work out after work. And one of my chick friends that I got to know at the gym, because she, how it goes. You work out, you get to know people every day. The same regulars come in 5 o'clock sharp. They leave work, go home, take a dump, get their gym equipment, come to the gym. Same thing. Everyone does the same thing, and you see them every day. You get to know them. So I work out sometimes. She has me spot her or whatnot. She's flirtatious and stuff. I mean, I never fucked her or anything, but we became, pretty cool friends. She's a cool girl. So one day she comes in, I'm working out like usual. She comes in like 15 minutes late, which is not normal for her. She's usually there like literally right when I show up. She'll show up like a minute or two after. We're creatures of nature. So she shows up like 15 minutes. She throws her bag on the floor. And I'm like, Rebecca, like, what the hell is wrong? You're in a bad mood today? I'm like, fucking with her. And she like gives me this mean look. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what's up? Like, seriously, what's wrong? And she's like, I just got in a fight with some guy in the parking lot. She's like, he was yelling at me. He wanted to kick my ass, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? She's like this little petite, like 110-pound girl and stuff. And I'm like, whoa, like, what? Are you serious? And she's like, yeah, he was going to kick my ass, blah, blah, blah. I didn't even do anything. So I'm like, who's this guy? Like, what car was it? I'm going to go outside. I'm going to fucking find out who this motherfucker is. Like, point his car out. She's like, no, Steve, I don't want to get you involved, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. He shouldn't be yelling at a woman, that's bullshit. He doesn't have a right to threaten you and say he's going to kick your ass. What the fuck? So she's like, no, let it go. I don't want to get you involved, blah, blah, blah. So like maybe half hour later, we're working out in the gym. She's doing the pull down machine. I'm like right next to her. And she points and she's like, she comes up to me. She goes, what's her? She's like, Steve, that's him over there. So I look over to the guy and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, do you know who that guy is? And she's like, no. I'm like, that's a professional football player. That's Barry Wagner. He's one of the best AFL players during the 90s, and he played in the 2000s in a couple NFL teams. So I was like, fuck, I've seen him around the gym, working out. We had a lot of like, former professional athletes and current professional athletes who hit the gym too. It was the off season, and I was like, fuck. So I was like, man, he's threatening her. Like, this guy's like fucking 230, 340 pounds, 6'4". He's threatening this little 110-pound girl. So I'm like, this shit doesn't add up. It's like a week later, I go up to him. I'm like, yo, what's up, Barry? He's like, hey, he knows who I am. We're not on a first name basis, but he see me around the gym a lot. So I'm like, dude, I'm sorry to bother you, but I got to ask you this. I'm like, do you remember some girl like a week ago getting in a confrontation with her in the parking lot? And he's like, oh shit, you talking about that little Mexican girl? And I'm like, yeah, what happened with that? He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, I was in the parking lot, parking my car, and she rams into the side of my car with her car. And then she attempts to leave the parking lot. So I'm like, I run after her and I stop her in the parking lot. And I'm like knocking on her window. I just want her insurance information. And she starts cursing at me, calling me the N-word. End this, end that, end this, get away from me, like threatening to shoot me and all this stuff. And I'm like, holy shit. So I was like, fuck, it's like, so that's a perfect example of don't jump to conclusions. Because a week earlier, if I'd run outside trying to kick this guy's ass, he would have fucking beat the shit out of me. This guy's like 6'4", 230, 240 pounds football player. So that's just a perfect example, guys, of never like just take someone's word for what they say. She was completely in the wrong. Like, she hit him in the parking lot and she just didn't want to like fork over her insurance information to him and stuff. So yeah, that was I almost got my ass kicked on that particular day.
That's Yeah, it's tough to try to come back after the fact and figure out what happened. You kind of have to be there to be a hero, because you come back after the fact, man. You won't. You might not be on the right side of the argument.
Yeah, so that's just a lesson, guys. Never let your temper get to you, and never just like, yeah, never try to be the hero. There's always two sides to every story, so don't just take someone's word for it. So all right, guys, look, we really appreciate the questions coming in. Again, if you have questions, just drop me a message, Steve SMI, on the forums. I look forward to talking to you guys. We will talk to you guys on the next episode. Have a good one, Rick.
Hey, have a good one, Steve. Have a good one, guys.
Guys, this is the required legal disclaimer. We are only sharing our experience from years of steroid use. We are not doctors, and none of what we say should be regarded as medical advice. Always check with your doctor before taking any drugs or starting any training program.